to do with like some kind of conditions when we were in a very dry period. Uh, they've proven that like psilocybin mushrooms would grow in animal feces.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a time when like our hunter gatherer ancestors transitioned from being like less gatherers and more hunters because the ecosystem was like more barren. And so, they'd be tracking these animals, they'd be tracking their droppings and all of that. And the idea is that they'd find, these mushrooms, and they'd take them and, you know, have an insane experience. And I should mention, like, hunter gatherer ancestors, I guess more of like hunter gatherer ancestors before we grew the prefrontal cortex, like the last part of it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because that's what it all has to do with, like the final part of our brain, the like intellectual abstract part, the prefrontal cortex. That was the last part, and it happened really fast in our evolution. Like it's still kind of a mystery. I think they call it the cognitive revolution, maybe something like that. But and so yeah, that was Terrence McKenna. He was like, well, it's obviously because of mushrooms. So that's why we sprouted the best part of our brain, or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. Like it's a fascinating idea. Like it's amazing to think about. But could it ever? I don't think it could ever be proven.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to like. I don't know. That's what I'm just trying to not fall into a trap of what if that theory was made up from really stoned people. Like I'm always at this constant battle of like, do mushrooms, psychedelics, and like marijuana, which isn't necessarily psychedelic but can be if you ingest it, like by eating it and like a large dose, sometimes can be.
Mm-hmm.
Are all the theories that are coming out now that have to do with psychedelics basically being a part of human, like whatever our souls are, if you want to talk about DMT or like whatever, I'm always in a constant pool of like, is that really real or is it just like these theories people come up with when they're super high off of these things, like since the 60s or 50s?
I mean, yes and no. Because like yes, obviously we have been, I don't know, making up these stories and kind of over exaggerating our experiences on these substances since they got popular in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like in history, in like all sorts of cultures, there's traditions of using different plant medicines,
Yeah.
basically psychedelic compounds, and they have very grandiose stories about them also, like that, you know, that are out of this world basically. And so, I think that science doesn't answer these questions. Like all of science is focused on the physical and on matter, but like consciousness and like the internal experience, like that's we're kind of left with nothing in that regard except for religion. And then when you interact with these compounds and it's extremely spiritual and out of this world, and you come out of that and you're like, well, how am I supposed to like? It's not that I'm denying science, but it's like that exists.
Yeah.
If that exists, why does that exist? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
why in our like world that came from the Big Bang and like that we can perfectly explain away and track a long time, like why is that there? Like,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
seems like an Easter egg or something from God, like a glitch.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that once I figure I've been fascinated with psychedelics since high school. Around maybe a little bit before, I don't know. Whenever I figured out what weed was, I pretty much figured out what everything else was, type of deal. And I hadn't done psychedelics. I don't know if I should say that. Do I need to edit this? Does that
No,
matter?
no.
I have no idea. uh,
I mean, the government's not watching our podcast.
That's true. I mean, I hope not.
Until we start talking about Bitcoin,
Oh shit.
and they're
We'll
gonna
bleep
kick.
that. We'll bleep that part out.
Yeah.
Um, I'll get the tinfoil on the tinfoil. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, I hadn't I hadn't done psychedelics in high school, but I was interested in them, is what I'll
Yeah.
say. And a lot of years of just reading Reddit or things similar to Reddit on the internet, anything I could get my hands on about them. And I didn't really know about Terrence McKenna at all until recently. Like, there's a lot of like big name psychedelic people I didn't know about. Um, but I've always been interested in peyote and psilocybin and acid. But I mean, acid less than the other two because it doesn't seem as natural. Um, but two for
Yeah.
three so far. So
Yeah. I mean, there's something about the subject. It's just it's interesting and like mysterious and controversial. It makes so much sense that it was uh, basically big on the internet, or I feel like a lot it grew in popularity on the internet, like
yeah,
Reddit, YouTube, just like all this information about it. Everyone wanted to know about it, and also it's the exact type of thing that was kind of censored from the media and just the entire military industrial media complex. Like, like psychedelics were, there's a ton of research happening 50s, 60s, 70s, and it was promising and new and
yeah.
interesting, and it was
Military
completely
used
shut
it.
down.
Government used it.
Yeah. Freaking what do they call it? And MK Ultra.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Yeah.
actually a movie, Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, is that?
Um,
Didn't know that's what that was about.
that's what that movie's about. It's about Vietnam soldiers being tested on with LSD and them like, well, I'm not gonna spoil it, but that's what it's about.
Yeah.
I'm 90% sure that's what it's about.
Yeah. I mean, they tried to like see if they could program people with this
Yeah,
stuff, and then they found out like, oh no, it just like has them pierce through the illusion of self and fall into infinite love and consciousness. So let's make it illegal. Like,
yeah.
that's not good. We don't need that happening. Like, we thought it would control them and make them into psychopaths and murderers, but no. So it's not good.
There's let me grab something real quick. I'm gonna go off camera for a second, and
Yeah.
some books that a book that I've been reading that's about peyote. Let me grab it
Oh,
real quick.
nice. Yeah. I'm just gonna keep on talking because you're gone. I've only read the book uh, "How to Change Your Mind" by Michael Paulin. That's a good one about psychedelics, about the history of psychedelics. Josh, have you read or
What?
have you heard of How to Change Your Mind by Michael Paulin?
Uh-uh.
Okay, yeah, that's like the kind of the one book I've read on the subject, but talks about the history and stuff. It's the guy who wrote "In Defense of Food." You've
Oh,
heard of
okay.
that? Kind of like a big nutrition biology author, I guess. But
Okay. Cool. Um, this book, I didn't really know much about it when I bought it. I bought it at Half Price Books in the metaphysical section because that's pretty much
nice.
the only section I visit at Half Price Books off of. I'm not gonna say where it's at, but uh, yeah, that's pretty much all I get. It's called The Teachings of Don Juan. Uh, I don't know how to pronounce this. How do you pronounce Yaqui? 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 I'm looking it up.
Yeah, Kui.
Yaqui. Yeah. The Teachings of Don Juan, a Yaqui Way of Knowledge. That's what it looks like. I mean, it's in reverse,
That's a
but
cool cover.
it's part of 5 books of Carlos uh, Castaneda. There's a couple more. They seemed pretty old, but the first one so far, I'm almost done with it, is about pretty much like uh, it's half fiction, half based off of events of a man visiting a shaman that was like Native American, um, but like close to the border of like modern day U.S. and Mexico.
Hmm.
And it just talks about kind of like with peyote, it's so different than psilocybin and acid because it's usually only for like specific members of a tribe, um, of like Native American descent,
Hmm.
is what I've read at least, and the impression I'm getting most of the time. So that's kind of what's prohibited me from even wanting to delve into it. But then
Yeah,
at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if I believe in that, but I also don't want to be disrespectful. So it's like hard to like, it's hard to really gauge. Like, I don't want to just be like some like druggy sounding person. It's like, man, I really want to do peyote so fucking bad. Like, go
yeah,
trip in the desert. Like, but I've always been, that's why I've got these books because I've been interested in it for a while. Figured that would be a pretty good perception of what it might be like.
yeah. I knew a guy I used to work with who I don't remember what tribe he was in, but it was a tribe where they still did peyote ceremonies, and like the certain ceremonies are or certain psychedelic substances are allowed because they are a part of the basically freedom of religion, like freedom to practice
Or
the
like
traditions of your religion.
transitioning into like adulthood ceremony type thing. At least I think some of them are that I was
Yeah,
reading. Like,
I think a lot of them are like, yeah, like when you're
let's look it up.
13 or 14 or something like that. Yeah, I'm sure it's different across different tribes,
Yeah, definitely.
but either way, yeah, it's like legal here. So this guy I used to work with, he was like, yeah, I got to do it. Like I did it here in Oklahoma, like with my family.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he had nothing but good things to report, but he didn't really tell me much about like detail.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a lot, but yeah, I mean that's how you'd want to do that stuff, like with your family, like the people you love and trust,
Yeah.
and also like with intentions, like intentions for I don't know to make it meaningful, to take something from it, become a new person, or yeah, and like all of the almost all the psychedelic usage we see across cultures is stuff like that, like really deep pursuits and I don't know, kind of noble traditions, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry. Got distracted by the
Yeah,
feline.
I saw.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
um,
I had to shut out Wilson. Kept on meowing.
yeah, that's kind of what's prohibited me from ever really wanting to delve into peyote further. Is yeah that I wouldn't say fear. I just don't want to like. I don't know. I don't want none of that if it's like not for me. In some way I don't even understand. I'm willing to like just accept it and move on. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I just really I want to try DMT really really bad.
yeah, I mean I've been kind of just waiting for the right time, you know. I've never really like rushed those type of things.
Yeah, yeah, you
Like
can't.
like I said, when I learned about it in high school, I hadn't like officially tripped, till about 5 or 6 years later, maybe 7. Like, so that's what I think is important about those substances that people don't talk about enough. And I'm kind of glad that the whole culture of like, oh, you got to do a shit ton in order to like, I don't know,
Oh, you almost
or
have
you're
to
like a
earn your
pussy or
stripes.
something. Like you have to. I don't know. I feel like when I was a kid, at least, it was always about how much could you do.
Yeah.
And it's like it's good to see that that's at least I think that's finally going away. It probably isn't. It probably never will.
See,
But
that's an American kind of. I don't know. It seems
I don't
like
know
it's
if it's an American thing though, because there's some Russians
over.
I see that are fucking drinking or doing other shit that is like off the rails. I've seen some videos, man.
Yeah, we all watch the Russian.
Yeah.
They're badass. They're badass. I admit it. But I mean, uh,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what I was saying. I lost my train of thought.
me too. I totally forgot what I was saying. Okay, let me tell you this though. This is something I've thought about. Like, you have a cat, so you know this.
Yeah.
I have my son Wilson,
Hmm.
uh, and
Your cat son
like,
Wilson.
yes, my cat son Wilson, and I don't know. So first of all, I'd be thinking about how the Egyptians used to worship these animals and like what they saw in them and how they just, I don't know, put them on altars and worship them and gave them gifts. Like, there's something special about cats. There's something unique.
Hmm.
Like, if you really pay attention, the way that they move and the way that they interact with the world, like, there's something off kilter. You can't see, like when you're watching a dog, like you can see the dog's intentions just like in its body and the way that it moves, emotes, where it goes, where it's smelling. And but cats are just, they're off the map. They're like completely unpredictable sometimes. And I know that all cats do this. I see Wilson do this. He'll be, I'll be scratching his head or something. He'll be really into it, and he'll just stop and he'll just look at nothing, like look at the wall
Hmm.
and just stare at it, at nothing, nothing insignificant. Sound, there wasn't anything, and he'll just stare at it with such intensity, as if he's seeing God, and then he'll just like run away, or he'll do that and he'll just like turn away like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's just these little quirks. Just makes you think like are they on the juice? Is what I'm trying to say.
Are they tapped in? I don't know,
Are
man.
they tapped in? Are they seeing what we're trying to see?
I've never thought this in my life, but when you started talking about Egyptians and cats, my first thought was, wow, those pyramids must have smelled like shit. Because they had no fucking litter, man. That was my first thought. That's what I was thinking. And then I was thinking if they were.
They got had the sand.
Oh, yeah,
It's
that's
not the
true.
kid. It's not the
That's where it
kid.
came from. That's
Yeah.
where it came from. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, can they see another dimension, or are they just like crazy? I think my cat is not smart at all. Personally, I'm not saying your cat isn't, because your Wilson is probably
He's
extremely smart. But my cat is definitely scared of a balloon
not.
and a couple of other things that are like pieces of paper and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they can perceive something we can't. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always, or since I've had Wilson, I've really had that feeling. But I mean, either way, like, even it's probably not true, but like either way, like cats are amazing.
Yeah.
There's just something about them that's deeply mysterious. Like, it makes sense why they are worshipped to me. I don't know.
I think it's because they're predators, but they're also prey in a sense that they're like, but they can also be cuddly.
Well,
I
like
think they
they'll
just
like
resemble.
submit.
Yeah, 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 when they want to. So like maybe the cats were bigger there.
Yeah.
Like maybe they were just bigger and scarier. So then the fact that they would submit to the Egyptians, they were like, "Oh fuck, we gotta worship this thing, or it's gonna bite my head off." I don't know. Tiger King.
They would mummify
Yeah.
tiger. Or they found no, not tigers, lions.
Oh shit.
Maybe tigers as well, but
Well, maybe
yeah, they
that's
found
the
the
bug that
mummified
got. Yeah, maybe that's the bug that got Oklahoma's finest, dude. Maybe
tiger.
that's what happened to the Egyptians. Was Tiger King. It's all for full circle now, dude.
I mean, he saw what they saw.
He did, and so does everyone in that market. Imagine though that you're sleeping in a room and a tiger's doing that exact thing that Wilson was doing. You're just talking to him, to your big tiger. You're like, "Oh hey, uh, Philip," and you're just petting its ear, and then it just quickly turns around and looks at something right behind you that doesn't exist, and it looks like
Yeah,
it's about to eat you.
yeah. Like I would take it more seriously. I don't know why, but I would believe it more than I believe Wilson,
That is true.
and it
Yeah.
would just scare me even more.
The bigger the cat, the bigger the monster that exists that you can't see.
That's true. Like I don't know. I either way, like different animals, they have different creatures. Like they have different perceptions of reality. Like whatever, if what we consider to be consciousness, that our moment to moment experience of being alive, like if animals have that, which I think they do, like if you're a bat, what is that consciousness like? I mean, the to echolocate,
Yeah.
to have radar, or if you're
Because it's all
yeah, and
based.
how far down does it go? Of course, that's the classic question too.
Yeah, it's all based on survival. So
Yeah.
whatever you do to survive is just kind of programmed in you, no matter what species.
Hmm.
And so, do you think that's why, like, maybe some people who that's I mean, I guess personally that's why I think psychedelics are important because they can help reset uh already existing programs that are in your head, maybe. And like maybe that's what I've often thought, maybe that's what a bad trip is like you yourself, your body, your subconscious is panicking at the fact that there's a substance inside of your body that is changing your perception, and your like legitimate reaction is, I'm gonna think that there's 100 crazy ass scenarios going on other than what's actually going on right now, which is I took a substance that is making everything flip upside down right in front of my very eyes. And I've only thought of it that way because I've never experienced like a bad trip. You
Hmm.
know, I've never had a bad experience. And I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's like people have bad trips when they have an ego death, but some people
Yeah.
are looking for the ego death, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's what you're describing is like there's some, and maybe it's like a pattern that you're confronting, or maybe it's just some aspect of yourself that normally you can't see because it's just so, like, you have so much cognitive dissonance or something, and then you take this substance and suddenly you see yourself with just like all that raw truth, and it's just overwhelming, and it's painful, and maybe like a part of your brain knows that, but you're in the mix of everything, so it just comes out in images and scary clowns and whatever appears in your vision whenever you're tripping out. But uh, I don't know. I mean, one thing we've learned about how psychedelics affect your brain is uh, basically you would think with all the stuff that happens whenever you take a strong psychedelic you know dosage, you would think all of the lights and the craziness that you see, you'd think that if you scan someone's brain and they took LSD, you would imagine that, there'd be fireworks going on. Like it would be, shit would be lighting off. But actually, the opposite happens. This There's this network in your brain called the default mode network. Uh, it's not one area in particular, but it's necessarily just like a few different areas kind of communicating with each other and sending information back and forth. And what happens when you take something like LSD is this network just turns off. Like that's what happens. So more your brain goes black, or
Mm.
part of it goes dark. Like
Yeah.
from the perspective of the scientists who are studying to see where the electrical signals are firing off. So that's something about that is even more terrifying, exciting, mysterious. Like it's not the substance, it's not the compound. It's like
Mm.
in that darkness, that from your subconscious, this is where everything is coming from. Um, and interestingly enough, when seasoned veteran meditators, people have been meditating their whole life, when they study them in the brain scan, when they get into a deep meditation, the same thing happens. Default mode network turns off. And of course, you know what they say. They're like, oh, yeah, it's ultimate bliss, ultimate peace. I could do this all day. And I do. And like, no wonder, like, if they're really having that experience or some version of it, like, that's what everyone's trying to get.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, yeah, I mean, I think it's the mind. The mind is chilling with, I
The
guess
mind's
is what I'll
what?
say. The mind is chilling with the mind. So
Oh, yeah.
like with what you're saying, like, it's not the substance coming from the outside that's changing something. So it's you kind of wrestling with yourself. And
Yeah.
so I think it does kind of make sense that, like if that battle in your head isn't going well, or if something terrible or traumatic is uncovered, it could manifest itself in, that kind of bad trip experience. But like you, I've never had a bad trip. I
Yeah, that was my next question.
can't
If you ever
imagine.
had one, or if you've ever like seen anything actually crazy, because like I always hear that. I've always heard stories growing up, and I was almost terrified of psychedelics. That's why I was so interested in them. And everyone
Yeah,
just be like, I saw a monkey running across the woods, and then there was like a giraffe in my shower, and like just like dumb shit. And I would always be scared. And then when I finally took it, I'd never have seen anything like or heard
yeah. You didn't
anything.
you didn't hallucinate anything that
I
wasn't there.
hallucinated, but I didn't like come up with like whole ass characters. Like patterns hallucinated definitely.
Yeah,
Patterns like it wasn't that they even looked weird. They were like flowing with each other. That doesn't make sense, but like it was just like I don't know, wavy.
yeah.
I don't know, something that sounds trippy basically. I don't know, have you ever seen anything that you're like that's not real?
Not like in physical space. I mean, really, we're both kind of noobs in the grand scheme of things. I'm sure someone who's more seasoned would just tell us like, "Oh, you haven't taken enough," or like,
That's true. If you're a
"With
psychonaut,
ayahuasca."
if you're a psychonaut, let us know.
Yeah, yeah. We're trying to have you on. Come school us.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, nothing. I haven't seen anything like in physical space that like appeared. There wasn't. It's kind of just like you were saying, like things would be in motion, like things would be
Hmm.
moving, things would be changing, and of course I'd see stuff in my head because I've done like a few sessions basically just like in the dark with my eyes closed. But yeah, I mean, nothing out in the real world.
That's where it's fun, but uh, I wouldn't recommend doing it all the time.
Yeah,
Microdosing in public's pretty crazy. Playing music when you're pretty much on the verge of tripping is very terrifying.
yeah. I don't know if I
Uh,
would like that.
live
I already
music,
sweat so much. I'm just like,
dude.
gosh.
Yeah, 1 a.m. in a house in Illinois. Yeah, it was. I can't remember how many shrooms I ate, but I did eat them, and yeah, I think there were like 20 or 30 people in there. Maybe not 30. That's a little exaggerated, but it was for a fest. But it was at the end of the fest, the last day, 1 a.m. Basically, the last band to play the whole entire fest. So it was like all the true freaks that were still like drunk and gonna be drunk the next day were there. That's pretty much who that show was for. now
Yeah.
that I now that I look back on it.
Yeah, or the other people on mushrooms.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But in public is interesting. First time I did it, I saw Deadpool, and that was a better movie on
Oh.
substances than it was sober. I watched it sober, and I was like, "This is not funny." But when I saw it in theater, I was that guy laughing out loud. I bet you people thought I was a huge like Deadpool fan, and I had no
You're
idea
like
who the.
laughing at every dumb joke.
Yeah, I was. I was like, "Holy shit! This is the greatest thing I've ever seen." He's so red.
That's sick. I thought you said I saw a Deadpool at first,
Oh
and then
no.
I was wondering what that was, and then I was like, oh, that sounds cool. That sounds cool.
No. No. Definitely the movie. Um yeah. That movie was great. I should do that again, but eat mushrooms again and watch it. Maybe that's how you should watch every Marvel movie. Every like superhero movie should just be fueled with a fucking eighth of mushrooms.
Yeah. Okay, so we gotta go. I want to tell you about something. We're gonna have to
Okay.
go deeper on this on
Okay.
another episode, but
Yeah, yeah.
just to touch the surface, kind of. So you were talking about this earlier, uh, like when you're talking about the consciousness of animals, you're saying that like they're just trying to survive, like they're
Yeah.
attuned to survive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so they've proven in these studies, basically, they can run evolutionary simulations. So they can create a simulated type of environment with different, different parameters, different risks, and they can put simulated creatures in these environments and just run the simulation 1,000 times and see what happens and stuff like that. Um, and there's all different versions of these. Some are very simple, some are more complex, but basically they discovered um, through a series of these simulations. Particularly, um, there's this neuroscientist named Donald Hoffman. He studies like perception and vision in
Mhm.
the brain,
Mhm.
and what they discovered is that uh, creatures that creatures that do not see reality outlast creatures that do. Or put more specifically, creatures that exclusively see fitness gains, so evolutionary fitness gains, and versus creatures who see reality, just raw reality. The creatures who just see fitness gains, they outcompete them every time.
Hmm.
And it's already been proven that like the perception that we take in, like it gets flipped upside down in our head, and all of these different things kind of come together. And kind of the more that we've discovered about vision and how it gets processed in our head, like we've realized that so much of the information, like we get 1% of the information that comes into our consciousness, and so much of it just like slips past. And so he has this theory that basically and that all creatures are just so narrowly attuned to seeing fitness gains that we have a completely fabricated reality that we live in. And that actually, like this fabricated reality, though it correlates to the real world, because the fitness gains are real. If you're tracking down an animal, that's a
Yeah.
fitness gain. I have to be tracking some kind of reality.
Yeah.
But if I'm staring up at the sky and the pretty clouds, and or really anything else, like the whole overlay of reality could be totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like, so that's just kind of his idea. And so it makes you think, like, okay, wow, what if we are really seeing the bare minimum, or some just like a minimum amount of the real world, kind of just what we had to see to be hunter gatherers in our history. And it makes you think, like, the psychedelics, like, okay, a part of our brain is turning off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's just like pulling back,
And a cert.
the Truman Show, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
showing us a little bit of taste of like the real kind of complexity and richness that we live in.
What
I
do you
mean,
think? What do you think prohibits people from delving into that even further? Do you think it? Because I guess, well, yeah, I'll ask that, but I think I kind of I have an answer too to that question. I don't know. Do you?
with Donald Hoffman's stuff
Well, yeah,
specifically.
just saying like, what do you think prohibits? Yeah, I mean, what do you think prohibits his view, like the ability for humanity to explore that more?
Yeah, so for one, he's kind of just coming forward recently with these ideas, which is why I've heard about him.
Mm.
And really, he has a whole. I've only kind of talked about a small part of it, but that's kind of the way into the door of his ideas, is to realize that, like, evolution set us up to see exactly what gets us to eat and
Mm-hmm.
procreate and survive. Um, and
I think
Yeah,
maybe
and
religion.
then
Religion,
say what?
maybe religion is like a factor that plays in not being allowed to push to research that more. I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, people had similar ideas, like ideas about consciousness being more fundamental in the universe, or kind of, that when we take psychedelics, like, we're connecting to reality, or we're connecting to something more true. Like, those are definitely ideas that have been explored and talked about, but mostly by philosophers, or mostly by people kind of just, thinking about it. It's so hard to start to bring science into that.
Hmm.
And yeah, the people that tried to, they all got shut down. And even now, I mean, if you have these kind of ideas that question, decades of science and decades of evidence and all this stuff, like, just basically that challenges people's model of the world, you won't get funding to do your research or whatever. You won't get the positions that you need, because, academia, it's kind of like a hierarchy in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't incentivize people to explore ideas that are super far out there.
Yeah. I feel like it has something to do there's always a subconscious battle that I'm having from being conditioned to believe in like heaven and hell and good and bad spirits, and have a tendency, my brain lays like towards that rationality for some reason. Like, I wonder if that's ever been like a detriment to that, or like how do you buy into the theory of like there's evil spirits or like an evil entity that we can't perceive, that's like on an in between plane of like here and whatever God and the devil may or may not be, that like is playing or having a role in like either tempting or encouraging us to use these substances to either make us fall further or grow higher? I guess that's a loaded question, but that's kind of where my head's at right now,
Yeah,
or my head's always been at.
I mean,
And
like you, I was raised to think of things in terms of, like, God and the devil, and angels and demons and things like these, and that, I was told from a young age that and you were told the same thing, I'm sure, that like there's spiritual warfare happening all around
Yeah.
us, right?
Yeah.
And you get that ingrained in your head when you're a kid that like, oh yeah, I've guardian angel, and like, demons are trying to get at me, and sometimes they do, and when I do, I masturbate, but then Jesus forgives me. And you just kind of, I don't know, you just kind of get used to these ideas, like there's angel or there's demons tempting me, and then angels protecting me,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know, like it's a it's an ancient idea that there are entities
That's
um,
probably why people feel hopeless.
interacting
Sorry, I
with
didn't
us.
mean to interrupt you again,
No,
but
no,
that's probably why so many people feel hopeless
like
against
so we don't
like
have that.
well no, like hopeless against their own desires that yeah, could be unhealthy for them, but the only way they're able to rationally think about it is, well, it's a fucking demon, so I must be possessed as well, I guess. Like I feel like that's so it doesn't instill any type of like will to fight, unhealthy habits off. Or like it's
Yeah,
basically like you just have to rely on this angel. Like not saying it doesn't exist, but like fuck. I feel like if yeah, I don't know. I feel like if I would have listened to that longer, that's what I would have felt like now, like way more hopeless against the trials that every human faces, whether they're physical or like mental.
yeah. Well, some different believers or like different Christians, some of them are believe in predestination,
That's
and some
true.
of them believe in free will. And so that's kind of what you're talking about. Like in the end, do you have the will, and it's just that you're tempted? And Jesus was tempted, like in the desert,
Yeah.
but he was able to resist. Is that because he was Jesus?
Yeah, right.
Kind of seems like it, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I think that I guess all I was saying is I think there's something timeless about the idea. Like I put a lot of weight in things that have been around for a really long time and that have stuck around, and especially if they've been in multiple cultures, and kind of just the idea of like entities, whether good or evil, interacting with people and influencing people. Like that's something that emerges across like all cultures, across history. And so, it's if you're kind of being a materialist, you would say, well, that's just our mind kind of playing with ourselves. We're telling ourselves stories and just basically hallucinating, making things up in our head, and that makes a lot of sense. It's probably true, but
Hmm.
there's you think about it sometimes, like you wonder, or just even like spirits. Do we have a spirit? Are there other people's spirits around? And like
Yeah.
it sends you down 1,000 rabbit holes. But I will tell you this: one 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 force, one demon that does exist is is for me is entropy. Like the law and physics are really, by that I mean like the constant push for progress and
Hmm.
for like chaos and for complexity in the universe. And you think about what made the first what made those cells self-replicate and then iterate on themselves and evolve, like what made the amino split for the first time. Like why does nature do this? Why doesn't nature just accumulate, like the planets are created and you have different chemicals, different gases, but why doesn't it all just accumulate in a sludge? Like why does it
Yeah.
come alive and push out and replicate? Like what is I've always thought about like force as something, and we have it in us like smaller scale. Like we want to change and evolve ourselves, and like it's a process of like death and chaos. It's like we're killing what's old and we're creating something that's more new and more complex.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like if there's any kind of force that's really influencing humans and nature, like everyone, everything, it's just like that. It's like that entropy, uh, kind of forcing us all down the same single path. to the heat death of the universe.
Hmm. I really wish there was some type of education that was funded by the government that encourages thoughts like this that aren't tying themselves to a theory that we're trying to say is correct or not. It's just
Yeah,
like completely like just trying to make sense of it all. I feel like there's too many nowadays, there's too many people that are just like, well, that are just saying like, well, this is reality. This is exactly what it is. We've proven
this
it.
is my dumb life. This
Yeah,
is
like
it.
we've proven it, or I have faith that it's this way, or this or that. Like it can never be. It's always so fucking dividing. It's just like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And I know that sounds super hippie-ish, but I mean, I probably won't change my. That's always been my thought process about it, as long as I can remember.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't understand why. I don't know. Because I'm
Yeah, like
that even goes against what's being taught today. I have a hard time wrapping my head around shit. I don't really talk about it because I don't really know why, but I don't know. I just and I don't have anything in specific to like mention, but I don't know. It's always so hard to just be convinced that oh, this is reality. This is actually reality. What I'm reading on here is reality. What I'm reading on there is reality. Like
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, but you can't verify it. Like it takes so much.
Yeah.
Like even me, like I can talk about a bunch of physics shit, and maybe sound really smart, but like most of it I actually don't understand.
Yeah.
And I'm actually mostly what I'm doing is just saying the names, the
Yeah.
names of things that people have made up.
Well, then it makes me equally mad then when people are like people who also have no fucking idea what they're talking about, but they believe in it, are then always the first ones to be like, "Yeah, well, so and so said all this, and that's why I believe it, and that's why you're wrong."
Yeah,
And it's never a
yeah,
problem with being wrong. It's just a problem, and it's not even a problem. It's just like or I guess it's an issue with just, I guess, accepting one reality. I guess that's my issue.
yeah. If people use, like you have to take people's word for it because you can't verify everything yourself.
Yeah.
But also, if you're using it as an excuse to not be open, then that's just lame and that's not fun.
Yeah.
Like you should always be. In fact, if you're so confident that your view is right, then you should be able to entertain any other
Yeah.
and like or deconstruct your own view or take criticism of your view and all of those things.
And look at it. Yeah. Analyze it.
Yeah, and yeah, so we gotta trust people though, like especially with stuff like physics. I mean, it's too much. It takes a decade to. It takes decades for some people to get to the level of where theoretical physics is. It's just like a crazy marathon. Like I can't even imagine like the people working on string theory, uh, just everything quantum is
Yeah.
it's insane. But even the people of the past, Einstein's, Feynman, Niels Bohr, like these people were geniuses. They were once in a century, and they dove into these fundamental concepts just like with such a depth and with such creativity and just consistency. It's mind-boggling. Like we gotta produce more, but
Hmm.
also we need to produce people like that who are also open to things that aren't just mainly pushed to the forefront in
Yeah.
or things like that. I mean,
I've always had a thought like what if like every couple thousand years we keep having these advanced societies on this earth, but we start to take things like looks and personality more serious than actual existential threats, and then there's always just a reset button that happens to the whole planet. And
Uh,
all of the records are wiped. Everything is just like scorched or drowned or like frozen over, and we just keep repeating it over and over again. I've always thought about that. Like that would
well, that's
make
like the simulation theory, basically.
yeah, but like I mean just more on a physical level. Like not like I don't know why I think simulation theory is so like sci-fi to me. I guess it's not.
Well, I guess when I think of it repeating,
Yeah.
that just makes me think of simulation. Like you run it up to a point, like, this humanity,
But what if
it
that
lasts.
naturally cuz like naturally that just happens to something like well,
I
and
mean,
what I mean by that
reincarnation.
is like naturally it happens because we as people naturally start not giving a shit about the things that are actually important, and that just like over a slow time leads to this slow, painful, agonizing death of a species.
Hmm.
Like that's what I mean. Is like
Okay,
yeah, it not be like yeah, it is reset, but it's reset by us unintentionally through a process.
okay. What you're describing is exactly the Great Filter. Have you ever heard of the Great Filter?
Uh-uh.
It's this idea that okay. Have you heard of the Drake equation?
No.
Okay. The Drake equation is just like a way of like counting the stars and kind of hypothesizing how many, and if there's so many planets, how many of those planets could have life. So it's kind of just like a series of steps to theorize how many planets could possibly have life or how much life could possibly exist in the universe.
Okay.
So that's the Drake equation. And so the Drake equation and the Drake equation basically makes it seem like that it's just so likely there's other life out in the universe. And in fact, so likely, and the universe has been around for so long, from what we can see, that we should actually see proof. We should see evidence of other life, of alien life. And so the great filter is this idea that there's some process, like you're saying, some unintended process or result that every civilization is that actually all the alien civilizations are being created, but they reach a certain point of mass where they just collapse on themselves.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it's kind of like, you look around our universe, okay, there's so much room, there's so much richness on our own planet, there's so much possibility for life, yet we look around and there's nothing here. So what do we make of that? What are we supposed to think of that? Are we special? Are we the first? That
Yeah.
seems pretty, and all those things, like you start to go down the list and you're like, that seems unlikely. We're really the one out of a billion, one out of a trillion.
That would suck ass.
Yeah.
That would suck so much
Talk
ass
about lonely.
if we were the first ones and we were the ones who were setting the bar for like other planets to like
To get better.
exist for it to get better. Like we got the shit end of the stick as the planet. Like
Yeah.
we
Oh
could have
man,
been born in like times where dragons were made up or some shit. Or real, who fucking knows?
dude. I mean, I don't know. Like, if if there is a great filter, we're close to it.
I dude,
If there's a great filter, we're within 100.
that's another thing I want to talk about on an episode though. It could be my subconscious always fighting this thought, but I'm having a hard time believing it sometimes about like the earth actually being in peril. I think this type of scare tactic is getting a lot of people. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not a denier. I'm not a climate change denier or some bullshit. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I sometimes like to believe it's not as bad as they're making it out to be. Maybe they're doing that because if we get to a certain point in 20 to 30 years, there's actually no going back. Maybe there's some kind of filter on it or something for like the public knowledge. You know, that's what I'm saying. Like, who fucking knows in this day and age of false or not false information? Uh, but that's like a whole nother loaded topic that we could definitely
Yeah,
talk about. I'm definitely
right.
not denying things that are reality for sure. There are better ways we could take care of this planet, but
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm always like skeptical when it comes to space and like man-made theories, but like not skeptical enough to just deny it, except for like flat Earth. But like anything, like you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not denying the existence of it personally. I just it's so hard to perceive it sometimes, whether it's about space or climate or any of that.
yeah, like asteroids coming down, or
Yeah, yeah.
all the ice caps are gonna melt in 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely not denying that, but
It's like either way. I think. I mean, I definitely think that we are having. It's absolutely clear, according to science, that we are having a negative effect on the
mm,
environment. To what degree and how, all of these things are so hotly contested, and it's such a complex subject. It's just like it's impossible to approach. Also, it's really politically charged for people.
yeah,
But I mean, one thing is clear: we are not on a sustainable path. Like what we're currently doing cannot last. Like either way, we have to change. We have to improve. We have to consume less, or like consume, more efficiently. I mean, there's so much that needs to happen in our population, seeing in a lot of ways. And so, I mean, yeah, maybe that's the great filter. Maybe it's, yeah, the climate specifically. Maybe it's impossible to, like, if you're thinking about like bootstrapping a multi-planetary or multi-star civilization, like the cost that it takes to like get your population up into space and get the resources up into space, like maybe that destroys most planets.
yeah.
Like the population size you have to have with
Unless
the
you give a shit about that stuff when it matters.
yeah, unless you
Like,
start out
yeah.
like
Yeah,
being
that's kind of what I meant like through negative effects that we have as a society, which I think we do now for sure, for people's own mental health. At this point, it's like people don't even give a shit anymore. It seems like, uh,
yeah.
when it comes to filtering what they see and what their kids see, um, like, yeah, maybe it's just inevitable. Like, you create these like kind of what we were saying in the first episode again, or like even talking to Landon, like you create these uh, tools, this little toolbox in your pocket, and it's just like spent on vanity and uh, your
Consumption.
existence is based on transactions and yeah, consumption. So it's like, yeah, I mean that could be the great reset. But that's kind of what I meant. Like, what if that was what happened to the Egyptians? What if that's what happened to a civilization like 6,000, 7,000 years ago? Like, what if just our history is just like f- doesn't isn't even real? Like, it's just bullshit. Like, we just like I'm like, yeah, this makes sense enough, and we just haven't changed it. Like,
It could be. That's like in the that's like what Graham Hancock talks.
yeah,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
not fully that, but just kind of
Especially with Egyptian stuff. That's definitely
yeah.
yeah what he talks about.
It's actually older, and there's actually like older civilization before then that's like
Yeah.
cut off,
Yeah.
and all the ideas like maybe they knew stuff we didn't knew more things about, or like straight hidden
Knew
sciences,
more
like
about architecture, that's for fucking sure.
yeah. I mean, yeah, some of the ancient they still can't recreate today.
Yeah.
I mean, Pyramid of Giza is an obvious one. Maybe they could kind of make it today, but like, you know,
It'd take a long time and a lot of money. I
yeah.
mean, the Bass Pro Pyramid is pretty impressive, I will say.
In
Where's
Memphis.
that at? I'm gonna look that up. Yeah, is that in Memphis?
Yeah, I remember that driving into Memphis.
That is pretty impressive. What if we kissed in the Bass Pro Shop Pyramid?
Yeah, that's a pretty impressive pyramid. It's up there.
Yeah.
I mean,
I still
it's
need to go there. I've never been there.
Pyramid of Giza.
Both Bass Pro and Giza.
Yeah, let's go to Bass Pro first.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic about like us making it through. I think that we made it. I think there was like less of a chance we made it from like hamsters to where we are now, or like whatever. Like from dinosaurs got wiped out. Like
Yeah.
the journey from there to here was way from the journey from here to spacefaring civilization.
Yeah.
And like once like we're so close, like we almost basically kind of have the technology. Like once we can get onto space, we can take our eggs and put them in different baskets.
Dude, I think the only way we're ever, this is also a completely other topic, but I think the only way that we're ever going to achieve that is just fucking abolishing money and the concept that it's going to cost this much to go to space. Like, if the concept of money was just fucking gone, then we could, I don't know, maybe not. But that's the thing, like, it
I
could be,
disagree,
you
but
disagree?
we'll have to get on to. I'll
Okay.
just tell you this in short. If people were really greedy, if they were really greedy, long term greedy, they would want to get out into space. But the
Well,
thing is,
yeah,
our
yeah,
money, which I agree, there's a huge problem with like money and how we handle it, especially in America. But our money incentivizes short term like gains and short term businesses and short term ventures that make you money, and taking money and buying other assets and spinning it around in a circle and making money on top,
mm,
basically not creating value. Like if we really had a sense of value and you know rewarded that like long term value, really thinking long term, I think that yeah, like people would want to spend money and start the business and try and get. I mean, that's like what SpaceX is doing, but they're one of the only ones.
mm-hmm.
And you know, it starts out small at first, yeah, to bootstrap like a full spacefaring civilization. That's a lot.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like I think we can do it, but yeah, like America's not in shape. The world doesn't seem like it's in much of shape to be taking on that frontier at the moment. But I mean, I think we have to, and I also think that it will invigorate us to do it, especially if we can team up together.
yeah.
But that's a fucking
Topic and a
it's a
half.
fucking hippie fantasy right there. We can
Yeah,
all team up and get along and go into space and be
yeah.
Star Trek.